Welcome to my pitch for a sequel 2D Zelda game. The game I'm pitching in this video is a follow-up to the other 2D Zelda game I pitched, and if you haven't seen that video, you should totally watch it, but you don't need to since I've included the story recap and everything else I will be going over will require very little past knowledge on the game before this one. But you should watch it though. You don't need to watch it, but you should. Anyways, here's the deal. This game takes place in the Child timeline, about 10 years after Shadow Descent, following the same hero from that game, the Hero of Magic. Also, no more Four Swords Adventures in this timeline, since these two games just aren't compatible in the same branch. Although this game does borrow a couple ideas from it. Now, you'd expect a 2D Zelda game to have a much smaller effect on the Zelda universe as a whole, just like most other post-Ocarina 2D Zelda games have had, including the last one I pitched. But, you know what? Nah, that's no fun. We're giving this game major connotations. Darker atmosphere, many more connections to games all throughout Zelda's history, and not only will it be a sequel to Shadow of Descent, it will also be a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom. No, there won't be any Zonai, and there won't be any imprisoning war shenanigans. Instead, this game will be setting up a bunch of other smaller elements, and one much larger element. Anyways, here's how we're going to do this. After the very brief recap, I'll discuss this game's opening sequence. Once that's done, I'll talk about the game's mechanics, world map, and gameplay, and then after that, we'll be spending the rest of the video talking about this game's progression and story. Anyways, recap time. Skip ahead if you've seen the original or if you simply do not care. For a millennia, a legendary fountain of unknown origin has lain in a cave behind Hyrule Castle. Anyone who took a dip in this fountain would be gifted with strange magical power. The strength of their power would depend on their strength of will when they bathed in the fountain, and the kind of magic they gained depended on the traits of the user, both physical and mental. This fountain's water could also be used to enchant physical objects. A few centuries ago, the King of Hyrule discovered this fountain, and instructed 3 of his most trusted subjects to wield the fountain's power and use it to make a barrier that would shield the entire kingdom from evil, both in the form of ordinary monsters and you-know-who. These 3 mages did as ordered by conjuring up a great magical jungle that covered the entire landscape of Hyrule, which was imbued with powerful warding magic that destroyed any evil which entered the kingdom. However, the creation of this jungle was tolling on the mages, and even more so on their bloodline, causing their modern descendants to be consumed by homicidal psychosis. These 3 descendants tracked down the fountain their ancestors bathed in, and dipped in it themselves, becoming the 3 Blood Mages, who were immune to the jungle's anti-evil effects thanks to their ancestry with the jungle's creators. The 3 Blood Mages then found a way to destroy the jungle's magic, causing it to wilt and slowly die while the monsters were once again allowed to roam free in Hyrule. Link and Zelda eventually managed to track down the mages and use a sword that was enchanted by the fountain to remove their powers, but by then it was too late, and Hyrule was subject to the threat of monsters and evil once more. The Blood Mages managed to slip away in the celebration of their defeat, but without their powers, they weren't much of a threat anymore. And that brings us up to present-day Hyrule, just over 10 years after the jungle's destruction. Alright, recap over, it's time for the opening sequence. A cutscene shows a baby piglet surrounded by older pigs. The piglet stares up at the largest pig in the group, as all the pigs begin pushing the piglet out of the barn. Once the piglet's been pushed out of the barn fully, the barn doors slam shut. The piglet yells angrily at the door, but it stays closed. It then turns around to see 3 other animals, a monkey, a white rabbit, and another pig. The older pig approaches the piglet, and leads him along to a small puddle. The older pig encourages the piglet to walk into the puddle, and the piglet obliges. Once the piglet stands fully in the puddle, his eyes turn dark red. A dark, inky black starts filling up the puddle, and to top that off, the puddle also starts growing larger. The puddle grows quickly and steadily, until inky black tendrils start coming out of the water. The puddle grows big enough to surround the base of the barn, and then the tendrils start wrapping around the barn before pulling it underneath the water. Then, Link wakes up in a cold sweat. It's currently the middle of the night. However, Link isn't the only one awake right now. It seems pretty much everyone in the room woke up around the same time as Link did, just as confused. The camera then cuts away and starts looking at other houses around Hyrule, where other people are also waking up in a cold sweat. It seems that everyone in Hyrule had the same dream at once. The scene ends in Zelda's chambers in Hyrule Castle. Zelda wakes up in a similar state to everyone else, but after she quickly gets her bearings, she immediately gets out of bed with a determined look on her face. Cut to gameplay. At the dead of night by the entrance to a cavern behind Hyrule Castle. Zelda is with you, carrying a torch, insisting that the puddle in the dream that everyone in the kingdom had must have represented the Fountain of Mystic Strength, which was discovered back here near the end of the last game. The Cave of Mystic Strength has a very different vibe from before. There were 2 guards standing posts at the entrance of the cave to prevent anyone from intruding, but these guards seem to be dead. On top of that, whatever killed them seems to have hit them from behind, and they were watching the outside of the cave, meaning whatever killed them came from inside. Eventually, you'll arrive at the fountain, and things are definitely wrong down here. The fountain seems to be covered in what we know as gloom, and the gloom haze is exceptionally thick here. Zelda approaches the fountain. She brings forth her light magic and uses it to attempt to dry out the entity which lives inside the fountain. The entity is being choked out by gloom, but it's able to get out a few words thanks to Zelda. It says,
Demon, return, Gerudo, Temple, Triforce, Power, go now!
The center of the fountain lights up from beneath like a spotlight, and that spotlight turns to Link and Zelda. There's a flash of light on the camera, and when the light dissipates, Link and Zelda find themselves having been magically transported to Gerudo Town. Looking around at Gerudo Town, it's a wreck. Something big and dangerous came through here and left a massive trail of destruction in its wake. There's also a few gloom-infested bokoblins around for combat purposes, and since Zelda's with you, she'll use her magic to help you out on occasion. Survivors strewn around the town say that it was hard to see exactly who or what did this to the town since this all happened at night, but that shortly after the mass prophetic dream woke up the entire town, some sort of monster rolled through. It looked like some kind of boar standing on 2 legs. Some say it was wielding a trident, and others say it attacked using some kind of dark gloom magic. Everyone said that it went towards the palace at the center of the town. Upon arrival at the palace, you'll find the Gerudo Queen, who seems to be suffering from some kind of gloom infection. Her words are barely coherent.
Kid returned. Shouldn't have exiled. Should have been more careful. He'll kill us all. He'll kill us all.
After talking to the sick Gerudo Queen, her handmaiden will come up to you and tell you to follow her. She'll take you to the side of a mountain that's right up against the palace, where there's a massive hole. The handmaiden says that this hole was in place of a hard rock entrance, and that it was said to be unbreakable by anyone who didn't hold the incredible power and the determination to do so. The beast that came through town walked straight through the entrance and it shattered like glass. The hole in the mountain leads into a massive underground structure beneath the mountain, named the Tomb of Power, aka the first dungeon. This dungeon is fairly simple, with a lot of puzzles that involve you and Zelda working together. You can always tell which path is the main one because it has a massive trail of destruction from the beast. And when you make it to the end, you finally find that beast. Link and Zelda come across a massive bipedal blue boar. The beast's back is currently turned as it rummages through a large and valuable looking chest, and it's yet to notice Link and Zelda. It finds in the chest a small capsule, and when it opens that capsule, it finds itself smiling with glee as an object that looks like a yellow triangle floats out. The boar reaches out to the yellow triangle object and seems to absorb it. The crest of the Triforce of Power appears on the beast's hands. Then, it turns around and notices Link and Zelda.
You two followed me here.
Suddenly, the crests of the Triforce of Courage and Wisdom light up on Link and Zelda's hands.
You're the bearers of the other pieces. Look at that. And I thought I'd have to hunt you down. Surrender your piece of the Triforce, or I will kill this knight.
Zelda wants to react hostilely towards the beast, but she knows that if she does, Link will be killed. So she reaches out her hand with the Triforce of Wisdom crest on it, and the beast reaches out with his gloom to take the Triforce out of her hand and put it in his own. Upon losing her Triforce, Zelda collapses. The beast then looks to Link. The beast drops Link, satisfied with all 3 Triforce pieces. Then, he says something peculiar. Despite having the crest of the completed Triforce on his hand, with the Triforce of Power, Courage, and Wisdom all in his possession, he says,
1 down, 2 to go.
The beast then disappears in a massive flash of gloom, but he didn't leave without a parting gift. Some leftover gloom from the disappearing act remains, and it reforms itself into the first boss, Fountain Ganon. Link manages to get up to fight, but Zelda remains unconscious. After beating Phantom Ganon, Zelda gets up. She tries to shake off the loss of the Triforce of Wisdom at first, but she quickly notices that her light magic is now gone. The two exit the Tomb of Power and consult with the Gerudo who've gathered outside. The Gerudo have their queen in treatment for her gloom infection, but as this is a very new type of infection that they don't know what they're dealing with, it's going to take a while for the Gerudo to treat it. The Gerudo explained that the Triforce of Power was wielded by the last Gerudo king a few decades before the Great Jungle of Hyrule was formed, and that when this king was slain by an ancient hero, that piece of the Triforce went to the Gerudo people. The Gerudo built that tomb and hid the piece in there, hoping that it would remain undisturbed for a millennia. But it seems that instead it only lasted a few centuries before that dark beast started out. Link and Zelda fast travel back to Hyrule Castle, where they decide to look for answers. The only two people who can provide any sort of answers currently are the Gerudo Queen and the Fountain Entity, both of whom are suffering from gloom infection. The Gerudo Queen will take time to recover, but they'll need to find a solution for the Fountain, which happens to be way more likely to have significantly more answers than the Gerudo Queen does. Zelda says that she read in her studies about a legendary sword, dubbed the Sword That Seals the Darkness, that would be perfect for dispelling the kind of magic that's infecting the Fountain. She says that if you bring 3 ancient pendants to this ancient blade, then it should allow Link to pull the Master Sword out of its pedestal and use it to cure the Fountain. The Pendant of Power is thankfully in the care of the royal family, but the other 2 must be sought out. And that's the prologue to this game. I bet half of you are rolling your eyes and thinking, oh great, Ganon again, while the other half are wondering what the fuck is going on. But do not worry. All questions will be answered in good time. But first, we have to talk about the mechanics, because I really glossed over them last time for some reason, which is not a good thing to do. Link's moveset. He can use B to sword swipe as usual, hold ZR to block with his shield, and hold ZL to fire a bow or any other projectile weapon he has selected. X, Y, L, and R can all be bound to other items in Link's inventory. The A button is used for interacting as per usual, but can also be used as a roll button or to dodge jump. And yes, this can be used for flurry rushing. Link can also do his classic spin attack, and hold down the left stick to do a charge run attack. No Pegasus boots required. Then there's also Link's climbing ability to talk about. Link can climb most surfaces, with no stamina meter obstructing him and no vines for him to have to hold on to. Some surfaces will be super rocky, and you'll need the grappling hook to be able to scale them. Also, I'd like to post-emptively add this into Shadow of Descent as well, because I forgot to give Link a unique ability gimmick in that game, and because I think it would work really well with that game's whole jungle motif. Then there's also Link's weapons. Both this game and Shadow of Descent had a weapons shop, where you could purchase different kinds of weapons and stronger versions of the same weapons if you had more rupees. All other items are strewn around the world for you to find so you can progress, but the bow, and boomerang, and shield, and any other melee or range weapons you want will be bought here, and can be toggled between. No weapon degradation though. This is just for the sake of options. There will be no tree branch fighting. However, while there won't be weapon degradation, the Master Sword will still have the whole run out of energy thing once you get it. This is because the Master Sword will obviously be the strongest weapon in the game, and if it didn't run out of energy, then there'd be no point in anyone using any of the other weapons, but I also can't just not have the weapon shop system here, after it was in the last game. That would be lame. Options are fun. Now then, now that Link's base moveset is out of the way, let's take a look at the world map. It's the same map as the one in Shadow of Descent, except this time without the jungle covering Hyrule, which basically makes it almost entirely different outside of key regions. However, if you dislike the idea of reusing the same world map as before, again, just like Tears of the Kingdom did, do not worry. You don't actually spend the entire game here, not even close. After you get the Master Sword, you'll be visiting a lot of new unique places that weren't in Shadow of Descent. And with that, I think it's time to move on to progressing through this game. Link will get some new abilities later, and I'll discuss those once he unlocks them, but for now, let's get to finding that Master Sword. The Cavern of Courage is submerged underneath Lake Hylia, but you can't swim in yet without gear. A guy nearby says you may be able to get Zora flippers and diving gear from Zora City. When you arrive at Zora City, you'll find that the city is under attack by dangerous gloom squid monsters. A guy on the beach of the lake will give you his Zora flippers so you can help, because he's too scared to and he isn't a knight like you are. After clearing the invasion, the Zora King will give you diving gear so you can go into the Cavern of Courage in Lake Hylia. The cavern is filled with water, and much of it is submerged, meaning it's mostly filled with water puzzles. The Cavern of Wisdom is on top of a very steep ledge near Kakariko, and the people of Kakariko say that it won't be possible to get up there without a grappling hook for climbing. Everyone says you can get one from the Gorons at Death Mountain. At the base of Death Mountain, you'll find lots of Gorons fighting out with a bunch of living rocks that have been animated by gloom. Right near the base of the mountain, Link finds a hammer which he can use to smash the rock spawn. Once you use the hammer to deal with all the animated enemies and ascend the mountain, you'll meet the Goron leader near the mountain's peak. He'll offer you a grappling hook as thanks, which you can use to get to the Cavern of Wisdom near Kakariko. The cavern has a lot of climbing segments, and parts where there's stuff that you can break with your newly acquired hammer. At the end of the first cavern you beat, whichever one that is, you'll find the large room containing the pendant you're after, and a familiar hooded figure standing between you and it. The figure removes their hood, revealing themselves to be J-Lo, one of the 3 blood mages of Hyrule. J-Lo lost his magic at the end of the last game, so instead of using magic, he pulls out a spear that seems to be enchanted with gloom. J-Lo does an evil monologue about how he figured Link would be going after the Master Sword so that he could contest their Dark Lord, but that J-Lo can't let Link do that, since the Dark Lord is the Blood Mage's last chance to end the world. Also, even excluding that factor, J-Lo really wants some revenge. Cue boss fight. Since J-Lo doesn't have any of his original magic, he'll only be attacking you using the Gloom Spear. However, this Gloom Spear has some magic of its own, and sometimes he can use the spear attack to attack you with Gloom magic. After beating J-Lo, he'll use the spear to pick up a bunch of Gloom Haze, and once that haze subsides, J-Lo will no longer be there, and you can grab the pendant. Once you leave the first cavern, a messenger bird will fly over with a note from Zelda, saying that the Gerudo Queen has recovered slightly, and may be able to help provide some information. Your pendant mission is put on hold, and the palace in Gerudo Town is marked on your map. Upon arrival in the Gerudo Town Palace, you'll find Zelda already there, sitting behind the Gerudo Queen bedridden, and still suffering from a terrible gloom infection. Now that you're both here, the Queen tells you what she knows. For many millennia, a single male Gerudo named Ganondorf would be born every 100 years, and he would be made the king of the Gerudo. However, centuries ago, a Gerudo king whose heart was filled with demonic ambition gained possession of the Triforce of Power and nearly covered the kingdom in darkness before being defeated by an ancient hero. After Ganondorf's defeat, the Triforce of Power presented itself to the Gerudo people, and they locked it inside the Tomb of Power to prevent anyone from using it to bring destruction again in the future. Half a century after this, the Great Jungle of Hyrule was formed, and since then no male Gerudo had been born. The Gerudo believed that this could mean that the next male Gerudo could be a reincarnation of the ancient Dark Lord, which was being prevented by the Great Jungle of Hyrule. In support of this theory, a male was born into the Gerudo a mere month after the loss of the Great Jungle of Hyrule. Fearing the worst, it was unanimously decided among the Gerudo that this young Ganondorf must be exiled from the Gerudo people once he came of age, in order to prevent him from becoming another Dark Lord. Princess Zelda is mortified by the fact that the Gerudo decided to exile a 10-year-old boy, but then questions how this could relate on the attack on Gerudo Town, since it was attacked by a massive beast, not a male Gerudo. The Gerudo Queen responds by telling Zelda a myth about the Ganondorf Revolt, which said that he could use the Triforce of Power to turn into a massive monstrous beast named Ganon. A beast which fits the description of the monster that attacked Gerudo Town exactly. Zelda now questions how young Ganondorf could have turned into Ganon without the Triforce of Power, since he didn't obtain it until after he tore through Gerudo Town and the Tomb of Power as Ganon. The Gerudo Queen is about to tell Zelda her theory on this, but before she can, her gloom infection surges. Link and Zelda turn around to see another blood mage at the entrance to the room, specifically Rula. She's pointing a sword enchanted with gloom at the Gerudo Queen, and using some sort of gloom magic to deepen the Queen's infection. Link makes pursuit, but Rula manages to slip away before he can catch up. After that, there is nothing left to do except go after the third and final pendant. After you clear the last dungeon, whether that be the Cavern of Wisdom or the Cavern of Courage, you'll find Kyrian, yet another blood mage, sitting there lying in wait for you with a crossbow enchanted with gloom. Kyrian comments on how this is the last pendant that Link needs before he can pull free the Master Sword and use it to face Ganon, and how he's probably not even considering the blood mages as that large of a threat anymore. But then Kyrian raises a question to Link. Who does he think was responsible for Ganondorf's transformation in the first place? Cue boss fight. Like J-Lo, all of Kyrian's found magic is gone, and she can only attack you with the Gloom Crossbow. However, some of the shots from the Gloom Crossbow have unique effects, like trick arrows, but with gloom magic. Defeating Kyrian causes her to fire a crossbow shot that covers the entire room in gloom haze, and when the haze clears, she's gone. After this, you can grab the pendant and return to Hyrule Castle. Once you bring the pendants back to Zelda at Hyrule Castle, she'll take you to a secret basement below Hyrule Castle. In that basement, there stands a pedestal with a sword slipped inside of it. Zelda tells Link that when the Great Jungle of Hyrule was formed, several buildings around Hyrule sustained a lot of damage from the trees going right into them. One of these buildings was the Temple of Time. To keep the Master Sword safe and hidden, the pedestal on which the Master Sword sat was moved underneath Hyrule Castle, and it's lain here for 200 years waiting for someone to obtain the pendants and pull it out. That someone is now Link, who approaches the pedestal and prepares to pull out the Master Sword. But then, a hooded figure drops down between Link and the pedestal, this hooded figure being Rula, the final Blood Mage, who wields a sword enchanted with gloom. Cue boss battle against Rula. This battle is essentially a sword fight, where you face off against Rula. Rula can also use the sword to attack you with gloom magic, though like the other two mages, she no longer has her regular magic powers. Once you beat her, a cutscene shows Link disarming Rula and then pointing his sword at her threatening. Zelda walks up to Rula and urges her to spill the beans on how Ganondorf became Ganon and how the Blood Mages are involved in this. Rula, not wanting to get a sword to the throat, obliges. Rula tells Link and Zelda how she and the other Blood Mages spent the last 10 years struggling, with little hope of achieving their goal of destroying all life in the world. During that time, they learned about the ancient Dark Lord Ganondorf, and eventually they found out about the new male Gerudo who had been recently exiled. Rula went to young Ganondorf and got him super worked up. With Ganondorf being so young and so angry, it was easy for Rula to manipulate him into desiring revenge on not only the Gerudo who exiled him, but on the entire kingdom. And then after that, Rula told Ganondorf about the Fountain of Mystic Strength. That's where he got his power. Link passes his sword to Zelda, and then walks right up to the Master Sword pedestal and pulls it out. But right when Link pulls the sword out, you'll notice that Rula did a fancy maneuver and managed to disarm Zelda and get her Gloom Sword back. However, now that you have the Master Sword, Rula knows that she's outmatched. So she stabs her sword into the ground and releases a ton of gloom haze. When the haze clears, Rula's gone. Link and Zelda arrive in the Fountain Cave, and all it takes is one strike at the fountain with the Master Sword for all the gloom to clear up. The fountain entity emerges from the fountain, now cured of its infection. It thanks Link and Zelda for restoring it, and then it asks if they managed to keep the Triforce of Power safe from Ganon. Zelda delivers the bad news that Ganon not only has the Triforce of Power, but the Triforces of Wisdom and Courage as well, which greatly distresses the fountain entity. Zelda asks exactly what happened in the fountain chamber when Ganondorf arrives, and we flash back as the fountain tells the tale. The flashback starts with young Ganondorf making fake bokoblin noises to distract the guards to the fountain cave, and then looping around and sneaking into the cave behind the guards while they're distracted investigating the noises. Ganondorf enters the cave and enters the fountain chamber. The entity then flies out to address Ganondorf.
Young Ganondorf, outcast from the Gerudo. I do not believe your visit here has been sanctioned by the kingdom.
You know my name?
I know many names. For what purpose have you come here?
My people have seen me as a great danger since birth. I did nothing wrong, yet they exiled me, believing that I was a reincarnation of an ancient demon. I am here for a little payback.
I can see into your very being, young one. You may be a male Gerudo, and you may share the same name, but you are not the reincarnation of the Demon King. You are nothing but yourself, Ganondorf. The Gerudo were wrong.
The Gerudo will never believe that. They think they know everything. I said I was here for payback, not to be comforted.
I am not forced to be used for destruction, Ganondorf. Revenge is never the wise path.
Lies. The Blood Mages told me about this place, and they said that the fountain powers anyone who bathes in it, regardless of what the fountain itself wants.
And you wish to use the powers I provide to exact revenge on your people? You wish to prove them right?
The Gerudo banished me out of fear. The entire kingdom shares that great fear for even the slightest risk of evil, to the point where they reshaped the landscape of the kingdom itself just to avoid that risk. What better way to exact my revenge against those who dared fear me than to have their fears be realized?
Please, there must be other ways for you to handle your current predicament. I implore you to please reconsider.
I don't know what several of those words meant, but even if I did, I wouldn't listen.
Young Ganondorf climbs into the fountain. As he enters, the fountain slowly turns pitch black. Then, small wisps of gaseous gloom start floating out of the fountain gradually, and more solid gloom starts slowly climbing up young Ganondorf's body as he sits in the water.
The strength behind your hatred. It's unlike anything I have ever seen before. Your magical power will be unheard of.
Excellent!
The gloom starts growing over Ganondorf's body faster and faster, until eventually it overtakes his body completely and Ganondorf starts slowly changing shape.
The strength of your magic has reached across the timelines. You've become the next host of the Curse of Demise. Dark Lord's power now lives within you. When once you were but a normal Gerudo, you are now...
The gloom surrounding Ganondorf subsides as the transformation is complete. Where once a young 10-year-old male Gerudo stood, now stands
the great Demon King Ganon. May the goddess's mercy spare this kingdom from your wrath.
My mind. I feel the arrival of new memories. Some of them conflicting. I have multiple memories of the same events going very differently, and then diverging into different chains of events. Only one of these versions of events led to this. The other one's... Dark World? Great Sea? What could these memories possibly... Ugh.
Ganon goes from looking confused to a look of understanding. He then turns to the Fountain entity.
During the transformation, you mentioned other timelines.
Oh, great Hylia, what have I unleashed upon this world?
Destruction. And not just upon this world, but all others!
Ganon then reaches out his hand and unleashes a large stream of gloom towards the Fountain entity, which also covers the game camera. Cut back to the present, where Link and Zelda stand before the Fountain. The Fountain entity explains to Link and Zelda that centuries ago, in the aftermath of the battle between the ancient hero and the ancient Dark Gerudo King, time itself was split into 3 different branches. The timeline where the hero saved the kingdom from Ganondorf, the timeline the hero went back so he could prevent Ganondorf's rise and gain back his childhood, and a third timeline that was inadvertently branched off by the hero of time during his quest to defeat Ganondorf, which was left unprotected. Now that Ganon has the full Triforce, he can use it to travel across timelines and look for the full Triforce in the other 2 timelines. Once he finds them all, he can wish on all 3 at once to bring untold destruction throughout the timelines as we know them. However, the Triforce isn't the only way to travel between timelines. The Fountain of Mystic Strength itself has been known to transcend timelines, and if it empowers someone or something that already has a great enough power inside it from another source, it could give them the strength they need to travel from one branch of time to another. They just need someone powerful enough. Or something. Like, say, the Master Sword. Link dips the Master Sword into the Fountain of Mystic Strength, and the sacred power that it holds ramps up greatly, until that power eventually takes a different form. The Master Sword has just gained the ability to allow its wielder to pass through timelines. Zelda then also dips into the fountain and uses its power to restore her light magic. It's a temporary solution, and not nearly as powerful as when she wielded the Triforce of Wisdom. She still has magic now, though, and she can act as your buddy now, just like she did in the Tomb of Power. However, she can only help you while you're in this timeline, because the Master Sword can only transport one person at a time, and it's now time for Link to chase Ganon throughout the multiverse and stop the Great Demon Mage before he can gain enough power to burn the entire multiverse to the ground. To be continued! I'm not gonna lie, I went just a little overboard on this one, so I'll have to split this into 2 parts and cover the adult timeline and the fallen timeline next time. If you guys are up to listen to more of my dumb stupid ideas for a dumb video game, make sure to subscribe for when part 2 comes out, and also maybe watch some of my other dumb ideas for video games. There's my first Zelda pitch obviously, and then I also did a video for a new Kirby game, and I did a video for a new Metroid game that's about as long as this one would be if it wasn't a 2-parter. I learned from my mistakes. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please subscribe.